On December 23, 1978, during a brutal blizzard in the remote Lac Glacis State Forest, Maine, 19-year-old Javier Morales simply vanished. Javier was an anomaly, a highly proficient tracker and wilderness studies student with intimate knowledge of every overgrown logging trail. For him to be lost was preposterous, immediately elevating the sad, strange disappearance of Javier Morales into a baffling mystery that would quickly spiral into confusion, contradiction, and things that don't add up for the next 4 decades. His heartbroken mother, Marisol, a former schoolteacher, knew implicitly her ambitious son was not a runaway. He was missing, and more chillingly, he had been abducted. Marisol's certainty only led to frustration. Precious hours were wasted in a critical first 48 hours due to bureaucratic bickering and a fatal lack of urgency from authorities. Despite overwhelming evidence, Javier left his ID, wallet, and university materials scattered at home. The police initially treated it like a runaway case. Lead investigator Sergeant Daltrey contemptuously dismissed the family's claims, ignoring the blizzard and the fact that an experienced tracker would never leave his vehicle running. This negligence allowed the trail to go cold instantly, sealing the family's nightmare and confirming Marisol's desperate condemnation over and over and over that her son had been forcefully taken by a sinister, organized power. Search teams, eventually mobilized by community pressure, spent the next week scouring the surrounding acreage of the Lac Glacis State Forest, focusing primarily on the network of deep ravines and abandoned mine shafts near where Javier was last known to be setting up a remote camera trap for a university project. But the deep snow had effectively erased the landscape. The teams found no signs of a struggle, no discarded gear, and no tracks leading away from the small logging road other than those belonging to his snowmobile, which was recovered undamaged near the entry point of the protected forest, with the keys still in the ignition. What we do know is that Javier was highly disciplined about securing his vehicle and gear, suggesting he was intercepted moments after parking. But what remains unclear is how he could have been subdued so quickly and efficiently without leaving any trace in the fresh powder. Professional trackers, many of whom were friends of the family, searched again and again over the following weeks, but were forced to admit that the mountain silence was absolute, as if the wilderness had simply swallowed the young man whole, confirming the chilling reality that no one reported seeing anything suspicious that night. Local residents, few and far between in that sparsely populated region, eventually came forward with fragmented and contradictory sightings of a dark-colored pickup truck, a vehicle allegedly not native to the area, idling near the entrance to the logging trail shortly before the blizzard hit. But these sightings were dismissed by Sergeant Daltrey as unreliable testimony influenced by media hysteria. Curiously, a long-haul trucker passing through Black Spruce Junction on the night of the disappearance later claimed to have seen a vehicle matching that description speeding south toward the Canadian border. But his testimony was deemed inadmissible because he was hours outside the known time frame, a convenient piece of skepticism that raised immediate concerns for the family. Marisol knew the dark underbelly of the border region, where local organized crime networks had long used the maze of abandoned logging roads for illegal cross-border activities, and she immediately suspected her son had stumbled upon something he shouldn't have seen, believing his abduction was the direct result of a criminal operation trying to secure their secrets. Within 3 months, the official search operation was scaled back to periodic checks, a move that publicly sealed the case as an unsolvable mystery, even though they had not uncovered a single piece of evidence to confirm Javier's fate, nor had they even properly investigated the local criminal element Marisol had warned them about. Refusing to accept the state police's conclusion, she turned grief into activism, creating a massive missing persons campaign that plastered Javier's face across 3 states, ensuring her son would refusing to let her son fade into the anonymity of America's cold cases. A true heartbroken mother who committed her life to finding answers. She made a personal promise to Javier, a solemn vow whispered to the frigid mountain air that she would never stop searching until she knew what happened to him, demanding to know why precious hours were wasted in the crucial moments immediately following his vanishing. As the years went by and the case remained stubbornly cold, whispers from the edges of the law enforcement community began to coalesce into more concrete theories, namely that claims emerged tying this case to trafficking networks that operated across the unsecured Canadian border, leveraging the region's vast, uninhabited wilderness. These networks allegedly specialized in moving various forms of contraband, not just drugs and weapons, but sometimes people, often exploiting undocumented workers or vulnerable young men who vanished without strong familial or social ties. And while Javier did have strong ties, his remote location made him an easy target for opportunists. Some believe he was forcefully recruited or simply eliminated because he resisted, but Marisol maintained her own terrifying theory that Javier had documented the operation with his camera equipment, making his immediate removal a necessity for the criminal organization, turning a simple missing person case into a sinister abduction story. 5 years after Javier's disappearance, a pivotal moment occurred when Detective Luis Ramos, the only officer who had expressed personal sympathy for Marisol, received an anonymous, untraceable letter postmarked from Montreal, containing coordinates that led to the defunct and long-sealed Red Dog mine deep within the forest. The letter claimed that evidence of the abduction was sealed inside the main ventilation shaft, but also warned the police to proceed cautiously, claiming that many believe there's a cover-up that reaches into high places, and that certain individuals within the local power structure were actively protecting the criminal enterprise. When investigators finally breached the shaft, they discovered a hidden, insulated lean-to-deep inside the cavern. Equipped with a shortwave radio and basic camping supplies, which clearly indicated a secret surveillance or operational post had been maintained there. A crucial piece of physical evidence they had overlooked again and again during the original sweeps. Inside the makeshift shelter, they discovered fragments of a water-damaged logbook, pages that had been hastily ripped out, bearing a faint, unfamiliar handwriting style, noting logistical details like drop point E2 and payload secure 12/24, entries that seemed to confirm Marisol's fears about organized activity in the area during the time of her son's disappearance. These tiny, desperate remnants of documentation raised more questions than answers, as these fragments build a picture that never quite completes the narrative of what happened on that frozen night, frustrating the investigators who were forced to sift through the cryptic entries for clues about the fate of the missing young man. What remains unclear is whether Javier himself had written these entries after being detained, or if they belonged to his captors, but the dates were damningly close to December 23, 1978, the day he had vanished, making it undeniable that the events were somehow intrinsically linked to his forced removal from the logging road. Detective Ramos, emboldened by the discovery, attempted to secure a federal subpoena to investigate a local trucking company allegedly used as a front for the border smuggling ring, but his request was inexplicably blocked by higher-ups in the state capital, a move that shattered his confidence in the institutional process. Some will call that incompetence. Others call it something darker. The internal obstruction suggested a pattern of protection that went beyond typical bureaucratic red tape, reinforcing the belief that many believe there's a cover-up that reaches into high places, designed specifically to shield the powerful actors who controlled the lucrative illegal trade in the remote Northern Territory, who could not afford to have a single missing person case derail their massive operation. Ramos himself became increasingly skeptical of the official narrative, realizing that the initial decision to categorize the disappearance as a runaway case was either a tragic mistake or a deliberate action to ensure precious hours were wasted in a calculated effort to protect the criminal players involved. Following the discovery in the Red Dog mine, the atmosphere in Black Spruce Junction fundamentally changed, as the neighborhood was never the same after the reality of the organized crime connection settled in. destroying the quiet illusion of the remote, peaceful northern town, replacing it with suspicion and fear. Parents worried constantly about their own children, and neighbors who had lived side by side for decades stopped speaking, afraid that any loose word might connect them to the criminal network that had been operating with impunity in their backyard, terrified that they too might become involved in a tragedy. The simple act of sending a child out to play became an exercise in anxiety, as the family's nightmare became the community's collective trauma, all because a promising young man had been abducted while pursuing his passion for wildlife, the very nature of the remote forest now taking on a sinister dimension of concealment and danger, fostering an environment where no one reported anything out of fear of retaliation. 2 years later, a hiker discovered Javier's specialized, heavy-duty camera housing half buried in a tributary that emptied into the St. Lawrence River, a full 60 miles from the original search area, which instantly raised the stakes of the investigation again and again. Although the camera body was waterlogged and useless, the high-quality film reel inside was miraculously intact, likely protected by the freezing water and the dense case, containing a roll of 35 exposures documenting his wildlife trail setup, except for one single overexposed frame near the end. This final image, almost unintelligible, allegedly showed the indistinct shape of a large, dark vehicle with an unusual, bulky roof rack and what appeared to be two men standing near the logging trail, moments before the shot, which strongly supported the earlier, dismissed sightings. What we do know is that the men in the photo were heavily built and wearing insulated work-style coats, but what remains unclear is whether they were the abductors or simply loggers passing through the prohibited area, a maddening lack of clarity that kept the investigators trapped in a cycle of doubt. Detective Ramos attempted to leverage the photographic evidence to push for federal involvement, specifically citing the strong possibility of cross-border trafficking activity and the multi-state dimension of the case. But the FBI's response was frustratingly muted, offering only minimal consultative support rather than a full-scale intervention, another institutional refusal that suggested deliberate obfuscation. Their reluctance was fueled by the political sensitivity of investigating a major domestic security company that allegedly provided logistical services to the region's commercial trucking fleets, the same company that was being used as a likely front for the smuggling operation, creating a clear conflict of interest. This professional distance only strengthened Marisol's resolve, confirming her deepest suspicion that many believe there's a cover-up that reaches into high places that the local police simply lacked the resources or the political will to confront, leaving her to fight the battle for her missing son almost entirely alone. A truth that she would reiterate over and over and over to every journalist and politician who would listen. Marisol, through her tireless research and connections formed through she turned grief into activism, managed to secure the original manifests from the trucking company's Black Spruce Junction Depot for the days surrounding. December 23, 1978, documents the police had dismissed as irrelevant administrative paperwork, believing her son's abduction was unconnected to the local economy. Among the hundreds of entries, she discovered a record for a non-standard delivery, a trip that involved a truck making an unscheduled detour deep into the forest and returning empty hours later, a highly irregular movement that directly contradicted the company's internal efficiency protocols. And she knew this was the vital clue. This was the moment where her unwavering dedication to the promise she made to Javier finally yielded a tangible, actionable piece of evidence, shattering the years of dead ends and institutional resistance, finally providing a point of focus for the long-stalled investigation into the fate of her son, who was not a runaway. Unbelievably, using her own investigative resources, Marisol was able to track down the now-retired truck driver associated with the irregular delivery, a man named Emile Renault, who had since relocated to Florida and was living in quiet obscurity, burdened by decades of guilt and the terror of discovery. Renault, after immense pressure and a subtle reminder that his silence only protected those who had committed the abduction, finally cracked, providing Detective Ramos with the first real eyewitness testimony. He confessed that he had been ordered to drop off 2 men and a heavy-duty storage crate near the Red Dog Mine entrance on the night of December 23, 1978, and that, as he was leaving, he witnessed 2 large men forcing a young man matching Javier's description into a waiting vehicle, confirming that Javier had been forcibly taken and was missing under criminal circumstances. His testimony confirmed Marisol's initial fears, proving that precious hours were wasted by the police's failure to act decisively. Perhaps most troubling was Renault's description of the 3rd man at the scene, a well-dressed individual who appeared to be directing the operation, whom Renault tentatively identified from an old photograph as the CEO of the local trucking company, providing the concrete link between the organized trafficking network and the respectable corporate world, finally proving many believe there's a cover-up that reaches into high places. This revelation transformed the case from a mysterious disappearance into a high-level criminal conspiracy, forcing the police to acknowledge that their initial treatment of the case as a runaway case was a gross miscarriage of justice, as it was now irrefutable that Javier had been abducted by a calculated criminal effort. The criminal operation, allegedly using the remote forest for years, could not risk exposure, and the sudden appearance of the knowledgeable, tenacious student sealed his devastating fate. The day after Renault's confidential statement, Marisol was sitting alone, staring at her son's old backpack, exhausted but resolute, when the unimaginable finally happened. Imagine waiting 20 years, and then someone knocks on your door at midnight. It was Detective Ramos, his face pale and etched with professional guilt. Holding a small, faded Polaroid photograph he claimed was found tucked inside a safe deposit box belonging to the now-deceased trucking CEO. The photograph, blurry and badly lit, showed Javier, looking frightened but alive, sitting inside a dark, confined space with what appeared to be a ventilation grate visible in the background. A harrowing image that was allegedly taken in the days immediately following his abduction. The simple truth of the picture confirmed the worst of the family's nightmare, proving that Javier had been held captive, possibly in the very same mine shaft complex where the rudimentary post had been discovered 5 years prior, confirming no one reported the illegal activity. The discovery of the photograph, combined with the truck driver's confession, forced the state police to finally categorize the case as a homicide hiding a body investigation, though the search for Javier's remains continues again and again. Investigators now believe that Javier's attempt to document the dark-colored vehicle with his camera led to his capture, and that he was executed shortly after refusing to promise his silence about the trafficking operation, his murder serving as a terrifying message to anyone who might stumble upon their illicit activities. These fragments build a picture that never quite completes the full sequence of events, but the undeniable framework is one of systematic criminality, official apathy, and the tragic fate of an innocent bystander. A young man who was abducted simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time in the remote wilderness he loved. The case of Javier Morales stands as a permanent indictment of the institutional negligence that allowed criminal elements to operate unchecked in the remote northern border region. A tragic saga of a missing person that was covered up by a toxic combination of professional incompetence and political corruption, resulting in the sad, strange disappearance of Javier Morales. Marisol, the heartbroken mother, never stopped fighting, and while her search for her son's final resting place continues to this day, her tireless activism forced a necessary reckoning within the state police, leading to systemic changes in how they handle cases involving wilderness disappearances. She fulfilled her promise to Javier by exposing the dark truth and ensuring that the criminal network could no longer operate with impunity, proving that one determined woman could eventually expose a cover-up that reaches into high places, a powerful, heartbreaking legacy born from her family's unspeakable nightmare that continues to echo in the now quiet trails of the Lac Glace State Forest.